Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Measure twice, cut once. These are words of advice from my dad, but not everyone is as lucky. My next guest is the second youngest of 8 kids. When his mother struggled with addiction, his father took full custody of he and his siblings. But after a few years, his dad announced at his little sister's birthday party that he was, quote, done raising kids. Their options were to live with other people or go into foster care. So at 14 years old, he moved in with his newlywed older brother in a 280 square foot trailer. Despite the rough childhood, he went on to have a very loving family of his own, something that had always been in his plans. What wasn't planned, however, was creating a YouTube channel. During the pandemic quarantine of 2020, the Bellevue, Washington-based dad posted some simple videos with fatherly how-tos that were absent when he grew up. Since then, he's written a book called Dad, How Do I? And his YouTube channel by the same name has skyrocketed to 4 million subscribers. 4 million. Today, the dad of the internet is going to talk about the importance of mentorship and the underrated benefits of forgiveness. Reluctant YouTube star, delightfully daddish, fellow curious introvert, Rob Kenney. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Yep. Thanks for having me on, Meredith.
I loved your book. I feel like as a fellow empathic introvert, I really feel your struggle of like enjoying being a private person, but also really wanting to help others with, you know, your story. I just feel that so deeply.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a tug of war that goes on inside me because I'd love to be able to pass along the knowledge, and I don't think God would want me to sit here and just keep it all to myself. He wants me to be live my best life, and so I've had to force myself to get out of my comfort zone.
I think that's a superpower of introverts. We will step up and put ourselves in uncomfortable situations if we know it will help other people.
Yeah, well, yeah, sounds like you've done a little more research than I have. I just know I'm an introvert and I struggle.
Well, you're not alone. There's a whole bunch of us out here, so you're not alone. Something I also really related to from your story was the sting of missed opportunities because of the absence of a mentor. Because even with like loving parents, if you don't have a larger network of people who have a wide variety of resources to help advise you and guide you and kind of keep you on a good path, you can not only miss opportunities, but take paths that, to quote you in your book, are difficult and inefficient. I'm curious what if moments stick out in your mind as an adult and how you got past that like potential that you can never kind of get back. How did you get through that?
Yeah, I think, like I shared with you before off air was, I try to really promote not living in the past, because it's not beneficial. And so, but I think you can learn from the past too. And, I had a couple big things in my life, like I share in my book with going to, it would have been better for me to go to community college. Absolutely. Since I wasn't really recruited out of high school to play football. I kind of was, but I had no resources or anything, and I just didn't know anything, and so I ended up going to a university and walking on. It would have been much better for me to go to a community college and play football because there was a few programs that were around in this area, and it would have just given me an opportunity to play more because I'm not up against people that are on scholarship and people that were recruited, and so it was a much harder road for me. And then also I share in my book about the opportunity I could have worked for Microsoft when I used to deliver office supplies to them, and we were delivering just tons and tons of office supplies. And then I worked on inside the office as well. But and I was offered, hey, you should get in here. I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And so, I don't live in the past. And so we're very grateful for the life that I have lived, but you have those choices, and it would have been helpful to to know some people that had my best interest. We all meet people that think they know what's best for us, but then a lot of them they have ulterior motives or what have you. It would have been very great. I would have been very grateful to have somebody kind of saying, "This is what I think you need to do. I have no skin in the game, but this is what I'd do if I was in that situation."
Yeah, those are totally different departments of life, college and college sports specifically. And then you're talking about, career path and also making job decisions. And do you leave the current job to go to the other job? My aunt is the executive director of a nonprofit that works with kids, and she talks about having 5 safe adults in your life, one for each finger of your hand. But I also think having at least that many mentors for your life in different areas is helpful too, because the person that could advise on, college sports decisions may not also be the correct person to advise about career decisions.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I joked with my brother Rick. My brother Rick is the one that took me in when I was 14, and I learned a lot from him in certain areas of like fixing things and that sort of thing. But I had to go elsewhere to learn how to tie a tie because that's not it's not really forte. And we joked about that. We did a live. We sang Christmas carols around Christmas, and we did a live. And I joked about that because Rick has been a big mentor for me in a lot of ways. But there's certain things that I had to look elsewhere.
Who do you consider your mentors now? And do you have a YouTube mentor?
I don't. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing because this thing is still, I did just like you said, I just passed 4 million over the weekend. I was actually visiting my son out in Virginia, and and we just got back. And while I was away, I finally actually broke the 4 million. Been saying almost 4 million for the longest time. Now I can actually officially say 4 million. So it's crazy. I don't know. I try to, and in my book, since you're reading my book, I try to pick quality traits that I see in other people. So I don't necessarily have a mentor that I go to necessarily, but I do I've always tried to, I really like that quality. I want to try to make that my own quality.
Do you find that generally it's harder for men to do what you just described? Oh, I like that quality. I'm going to seek that person out. Is it harder for men to do that than women? Because it seems like the category of asking for help, which generally, stereotypically, men aren't as good at as women.
Well, yeah, I try not to get into stereotypes because I do the dishes, I cook, I show how to wrap a present. That's all stuff I've done. I've never said, oh, that's a woman's job. And I also don't like it when because I hear this on my channel. I have people saying, I'm a woman. My dad never taught me this because he said that it's not a job for women, like changing your tire. That actually scares me a little bit. Well, what if you're out driving by yourself as a woman and your car breaks down? Are you just going to hope a man comes along and helps you and he happens to be a nice guy?
Right.
I'd rather you be equipped to at least attempt it, rather than, anyway, I just have kind of stayed away from stereotypes because I don't know. I think we can take on different roles for sure in a marriage because, you work as a team. And if I'm working, and there was a time where my wife was staying home, she was qualified to work and I could have stayed home. It just worked out that I worked and she stayed home. Right. So anyway, I guess I'm not normal in that sense.
No,
it's never really been something that I thought, that's woman's work or that's man should do. I want everybody to be empowered and encouraged and, to learn how to do as much as you possibly can.
I mean, I think that's incredibly in alignment with, what I know about you and having read your book, that you're a very practical person. And, it's practical for everyone to know how to do everything and then to operate in the areas that you are best at. So how would you, if you met someone today that you thought, well, I'd really like this person to be in my life in a mentorship role, how would you go about talking to them about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little tricky. I mean, I remember when I was in college, and there was a guy, a friend of mine that that played on the football team, and I really liked his confidence because I think he was raised in a pretty healthy home where he was taught to be confident and sort of that sort of thing. I kind of sought him out and just kind of weaseled my way into being his friend. I didn't want him to think I had any other ideas in my head other than I just want to be his friend because I want that to kind of rub off on me so I can learn how to be that way. So I think it's a little trickier. Maybe as you get older, especially in the church, it should be fairly easy to come up to a man in a church, especially if you know that he's grounded and been there for a while, and then he's not just somebody visiting or what have you. But right, I mean, I'll put that on him. But you should be able to ask men or women, in a safe environment like that, to say, this is where I'm at, and I would really love to get to know you better and help help me navigate what I'm going through.
Yeah, that's true. I think probably now that, we're talking about it and I'm thinking more about it, mentorship happens with the right people when you're ready. It's kind of like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I imagine that is probably correct with mentorship. But anybody out there listening or watching this looking for a more practical approach, you could always start a podcast because I have noticed, and you have a podcast too. And I don't know if you are, interview based, but definitely interviewing people feels like, a microwave of mentorship. And some of these folks stay in my life and I'm so grateful for it. So there you go. You could take the simple route, follow Rob, go just be that person's friend, or you could very elaborately start a podcast to create a lineup of potential mentors.
We don't interview anybody. It's just me and my nephew, but we're also talking about all kinds of different things you run into. And he's 40. And he's got 4 younger kids. And so he's at a different stage than I am. And so I think it's a nice variety because he's got his perspective, and then I'm able to say, well, this is what I would have done. And, maybe what he's doing is actually better. Who knows? So it's kind of fun and it's been great to get to know him. He's actually Rick's son.
Oh, that's so cool. I loved reading about Rick. I was surprised and impressed by how fatherly he was. And I loved how you really, like, when I watch your YouTube videos, they feel like getting a message from my dad that is helpful and loving. When I read your book, it felt like sitting on the porch with my dad because it's more of those soft skills like critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and risk taking, but they're woven in between these personal stories that really make them stick. But as far as like hard skills, like how to tie a tie, and soft skills, how to take a risk, do you feel like those skills are related, or that they kind of live on separate ends of a spectrum?
I think they're kind of related because I think you do a little bit of this and then you get some confidence that, hey, maybe I can do that. And next thing you know, you're doing all kinds of things that you never saw yourself doing, which is where I'm at. I kind of put myself out there a little bit, not knowing that God had such a sense of humor. That I was just on New Day Northwest last week, which is a Seattle-based television show that I used to watch, though. Margaret Larson used to be the host, and I always loved it because you just kind of felt like, it's kind of, it's just a feel-good thing, nothing fancy or anything, kind of some local people come on, and here I'm sitting there as as I'm driving there, I'm like, what am I doing? My wife and I are driving there. I'm like, is this really happening? I'm driving and I'm going to go be on this television show. I started to have a little bit of a panic attack. And then when I got there, I met Cisco Morris, who is a local gardener. He's a Seattle icon. Everybody knows who Cisco Morris is. And I went up and talked to him, and he was the nicest guy. And it got my mind I got out of my head and got it into, this guy's a pro, because he's been doing this forever. And so I was just kind of hanging out, talking to Cisco, and he was just so kind. So it was nice because it's like, oh man, thank you, Lord, for bringing Cisco, happen to have Cisco on the show at this same time that I'm here. It was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And that I think that's one of those soft skills that I mean that's one of my hacks when I'm feeling nervous or panicked. I look at around the room and see who can I make feel comfortable. I kind of lie to myself like, "Oh, look how nervous that person is." Yeah, the person's me, but I pretend it's them and then I engage with them and then it makes me feel better because my focus isn't on myself. And that's kind of like I guess you could consider mental health as one of those soft skills. And you talk about that in your book and oh my God, I was so heartbroken when you told the story about your mom who I mean, it takes back then especially, it took so much vulnerability to be like, I'm going to a therapist. And then the therapist said, and you quoted, "Oh, Barbara, just buy a new hat." Oh, that was a knife in my heart for her. That's awful. I
It is. It's
I went to a
horrible.
therapist during the pandemic, but I had to question my own beliefs about that. You know, like is it quote bad enough? And questioning things was one of the soft skills you talked about, specifically in the area of like deciding to stay angry at someone.
Yeah, that's been on my heart a lot lately, and probably even since the beginning. This whole thing that I've been on, this path that I've been on, I don't know what you'd call it, journey that I've been on, has been therapeutic for me. But one thing that's really, really, really jumped out is the forgiveness aspect of it, and understanding and getting it down on paper and recognizing, wow, man, that's when my life really started to flourish, when I finally let my dad go. As far as, he didn't ask me for forgiveness. I had to make the choice because it was in my best interest to forgive him so I could move on, instead of it's that whole saying of drinking poison and, thinking somehow it hurt the other person. When I heard that, I remember hearing that and thinking, wow, that's what I'm doing. And once I was able to let him go, it was hard, it's super hard. And the victim card that everybody has some sort of victim card. It might not even be a legitimate one, but they're holding on to something that is keeping them, and they might not even be able to forgive themselves too. It could be something they did and they can't forgive themselves, so they can't move on. I think forgiveness is just so huge because you can't do anything about the past. All you can do is, do the best you can now. You can learn from the past, but you can't live in the past. And understanding that, I think, is just so huge to growth. Because once you take control of your own life and go, okay, this is my life now. I'm not gonna keep blaming other people for why I'm this way. I want to take charge and be the best person I can be.
So for you, do you feel like forgiveness happened and it was complete in a specific moment? Or was it a process that looked more like, moments of bitterness or memories kept popping up and you had to forgive those individual moments as you went?
It's interesting because, I'm trying to destigmatize therapy. So I will admit that I've actually gone to therapy because of everything that's happened in my life and the change in that. And I remember talking to my therapist and saying, I felt like I have forgiven my dad, but there was a moment that something he did that I realized as I was going through therapy that I hadn't forgiven him for that particular moment. So it's interesting that you say that, because or since the time I finally forgave him, it was more like I've just forgiven him for the fact that he just basically was that cold blooded, that he
Yeah.
could come home and say, I'm just done raising these kids and they're going to go to foster care or go to the older siblings. The older siblings are going to have to take them in, or I'm sending them off to foster care. I can't imagine doing that to my kids at 14, and like I've shared too, there was a time where we were at home just kind of winging it. My dad was up, he'd met another woman and he was hanging out with her. He'd load us up with groceries and he'd be gone for a week, So that whole situation and processing it and not having a dad for, a certain period and kind of being embarrassed of that and trying to figure out who I was. And, I was going through puberty at the time too. And so just all the different things. And that's what I kind of forgave him for. But then, yeah, there was, and I won't bring up what the specific moment was, but something that he did that I realized I hadn't forgiven him for. He did forgive me later on, and I share that in the book. But I forgave him before he actually came to me. So it was really anticlimactic by the time he actually asked for forgiveness.
I found that story really powerful, actually, because I know what it's like to play a movie in your head about how the forgiveness is going to go down. Like they're going to be ugly crying and snot's going to come out of their mouth and they're going to be on their knees begging for forgiveness because they will have seen the brevity of their offense, like it's a Marvel movie or something. And then so often that moment never comes. But in your case, as you said, it was anticlimactic. Can you share what that looked like and kind of what you were feeling when that happened?
Yeah, we were out on a boat. My brother Rick had had reached out to my dad and said, you need to ask for forgiveness from your kids, and you need to tell them you love them because they don't really know. And because my dad, he had kind of somehow in his mind kind of just moved on without really dealing with what he did, and so we kind of had this superficial relationship, and so he was a little bit caught off guard by the fact that he felt like he needed to do anything, but he did it because he thought it was the right thing to do, and he became a Christian later on in his life. And so I know I'm going to see him again. I'm like, excited about that. But we were out on a boat, and he asked me, he said, Rick said that you guys. Yeah, so he kind of put it in a weird way, in his own way. He was like, and plus, he was 86, I think, at that time, in his late 80s. And so he died like 2 years later, I think. So I'm getting the years mixed up, but it was pretty close right around there. And we were on a boat together, and I'm looking through him. It's different than when I was a younger man and he was kind of a healthy older man, where I might have, but it was like, man, he doesn't look all that well. So I felt like I was looking through him. And so I said, Dad, I've been forgiven much. I've already forgiven you. So it kind of wasn't much more than that, and I've had people tell me that in the, that have read my book. They're like, I wanted something so much more than that. I said, well, I'm not going to make up a story. That's kind of how it went down.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's powerful, is because it's not, that's how it really does go down, if you even get it at all. So it's almost like, I think you even talked about, well, in general, in your book, you talk about when you're approaching something that needs to be done, like if it needs to be fixed, it's broken and it needs to be fixed, and how many of us, especially if you're a person who didn't have a mentor who helped you fix things that were broken, it can feel intimidating. Like, the toilet is not working. What do I do? And you were encouraging readers of your book to, like, just take the lid off and just look inside. Just take that first step and become acquainted with what's underneath the lid of the toilet. And it's just a real practical approach to let's just fix it. And in another way, I could see forgiveness as a practical solution, and just fix it. And the only part you have to fix is on your side. You don't have to wait for that person to put on Academy Award performance groveling at your feet, because it won't happen. So I really liked that. I liked that approach.
Thanks. You may never get it, like I said. So, meanwhile, it's your life. This is your life that's being affected by it. Let's let that go, so that you can then, you're not preoccupied with, oh, that's right, I got to hold this against that person, so whenever I see them, I got this, or that, and then pretty soon it gets too busy in your head. Let's just clear that garbage out, and I'm just gonna not let that stuff stick to me. I don't want to have that clinging to me and keep bringing it into the future. And it's freeing, again, it's free. And I can say that as someone on this side of it, it'd be different if I hadn't gone through it, but I've gone through it, and I know. And again, people have victim cards way bigger than mine. You probably have a really, I'm sure there's people that are listening that have way bigger things that have happened to them. Please understand, I'm not taking this lightly. I'm just saying, on the other side of that, that's when you start living, because wait a second, I got a limited time on this earth. What am I going to do with the time that I have? Am I going to sit and chew on stuff that happened to me, or am I going to just move on? Again, you can learn from it, but I think forgiveness is just so powerful.
I agree 100%. As we close, I would love to know what advice you would give to young people out there who are maybe in a similar situation that you are in. You wanted to find your way in the world. You didn't have the mentors. You barely had the resources. If you were able to sit down with that person, that kid right now, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, again, to be kind to yourself, because, I was beating myself up wondering if there's something that I did wrong, that I helped to bring this about. And when really I had nothing to do with it. It's something my dad, is a choice that he made. And so I think you still kind of have to go through some stuff in your 20s. I mean, everybody, so I've got to see my own kids, and my kids are in their 20s now. And I've seen the teens from a pretty healthy family. It's still tough. Life is tough. You get into high school. And again, if you're in high school and you're struggling because you wish you were the popular person, honestly, the people that I've met that are the most quality people, are a lot of people that had to struggle when they're in high school. And a lot of people that were the jock or whatever, they kind of, stuff was handed to them. And so they're kind of, can be kind of shallow. I'm not painting with a broad brush, because I've met exceptions to that, but I know, some amazing people that were kind of the ugly duckling in high school that came out of the other side. And they're amazing people because they had to build depth, to try to deal with that. So anyway, so that makes it a little bit difficult, because I mean, some of the stuff I went through was just what a lot of people went through, but then I also had this added thing. So I haven't really, I guess, thought deeply enough about it to go, what would I do? How would I have done it differently? Because I guess a big part of it, again, would be maybe a little more kinder to myself and not expect myself to be perfect. I tried the perfection route, and nobody's perfect, so you can beat yourself up when you do something wrong. And so I think that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. Tell people where they can find your YouTube channel, social media, and definitely buy your book.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. So, Dad, how do I? If really now it's become, that's what it is now. So, if you go to YouTube and just look up Dad, how do I? Or I'm on Instagram at Dad, how do I? I'm on Facebook, Dad, how do I? So anywhere. And then the whole internet dad thing, that's, if you Google internet dad, I come up, which is, I've shied away from that because I think that's a little arrogant to call myself the internet dad. If other people call me that, that's fine. But like I said, I think it's a little bit arrogant if I call myself that.
Well, I think I understand how you would feel that way, but another perspective is that, there are a lot of people out there, young people and not so young people, who really crave that type of person, dad-ish type of person in their lives. And I know from watching your videos personally and from reading the comments that some people just watch your video because at the end you're like, I love you, I'm proud of you. And I remember the first time I watched your video, I was like, that was about how to hammer a nail. Why am I tearing up?
That caught me off guard. I even tie in the tie, and I don't even say that because that was my first video. People are crying watching me tie a tie. I thought I was just gonna, pretty ignorant. I thought I was just gonna show people how to tie a tie, but it's the dad moment that people are longing for. And so I'm glad that I'm able to, I'm grateful for the platform that God's given me to be able to, try to pass along a legacy of kindness for people, and I do want to continue my dad chats and talk about things. I was in traffic today and just going, boy, some people just need to figure out that we're all in this together. It's not about you. We need to merge, let's merge together. It's a zipper. You merge, You don't get a zip up in front of everybody and getting cut in front. We're all trying to obey the law here. We're trying to head to the same destination.
Oh my gosh, please make a dad how do I video about how to merge in traffic if you haven't already, because the world needs it, okay?
Well, so yeah, I mean, I know we're wrapping up, but last night we were on a plane because I just got back, and even getting off a plane, it's like, we're all kind of sitting down, waiting our turn, and people are getting up as you get. We're near the back of the plane, and people are getting up, but we're still sitting because there's no point in standing up.
Right, yeah.
Until it's kind of getting closer, and then you can kind of get ready. And this guy comes zipping up with his briefcase, and it's like, why? We're all waiting for a reason, we all want to get off the plane too,
Oh my gosh.
And so here's the thing, because our flight was delayed, and there were people that they said, anybody that's flight is or that needs to get a connecting flight, please go ahead and you can get off the plane right now. And so those people already left. So I know that wasn't him. If he was trying to get on another plane, that's one thing. Go ahead, everybody go ahead, and we work together again as a team. But I think it is a microcosm of our lives. It's like, why can't we just look around and recognize that we're all waiting to get off the plane too? I want to get home. We were delayed. I'm tired. A little jet lag today. Anyway, I had to fit that in. It's been on my...
Yes, let it out. Let it all out. Well, maybe this is the beginning of like a sub series of Dad, How Do I videos that are like common sense. And instead of, videoing them in your sweet way, they're like slightly satirical and sarcastic and like a small comedy sketch. That's definitely the Meredith version of your video. Like it'd be borderline inappropriate probably. So you know what? Never mind. Don't listen to me. Follow what you're doing.
That's the hard thing. I mean, I've been compared to Mr. Rogers and to Bob Ross, and I look at them and they're so calm, and I've had people run into me with their carts at Costco, and I want to turn around and go, what are you doing? But it's like, oh, wait, just in case they recognize me, I have to kind of maintain my cool.
Yeah. Well, see, there's another video that could be a sketch. Someone runs into you, you turn around, and then you're like, hey, kids, this is how to keep your cool at Costco. I mean, those Costco videos, they're pretty hot on YouTube, so... Yeah. You put anything Costco and it will get lots of attention from the algorithm. I haven't been able to successfully work that into my my mix, but for you, I think there's really something there. Thank you again, Rob. This has been fantastic. Here's to more dad moments, and happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. I hope to see you next week too. I talk with the most interesting people that you've probably never heard of. Most of them are paradoxical and bring an opportunity for you to grow as a person. So if you like bright, meaningful entertainment, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.